The dinner table was set for 3. Plates were filled with salted mutton and potatoes, but the food had gone cold and untouched for days. A single chair lay on the floor, knocked over as if someone had leapt up in a sudden, desperate panic. In the corner, the clock had stopped, its hands frozen in time. Outside, the North Atlantic wind howled against the stone walls, but inside the lighthouse, there was only a haunting, absolute silence that chilled the rescuers to the bone. EILEAN MOR is a jagged tooth of rock jutting out of the sea, miles from the Scottish coast. It is a place of total isolation, meant only for the brave souls who keep the light burning for passing ships. But in December 1900, the light went out. When a relief ship finally fought through the waves to investigate, they found the entrance gate locked and the beds neatly made. The lighthouse was in perfect order, but the 3 keepers had simply vanished without a single trace or struggle. This wasn't supposed to happen to men like James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. These were seasoned professionals, men who understood the dangers of the sea and the strict discipline of the Northern Lighthouse Board. They weren't prone to panic or carelessness. Yet, they left their posts during a time when the light was most critical. As the rescuers searched the island, they realized they weren't just looking for missing men, they were looking for an explanation that defied every law of maritime logic. The mystery began when the steamer Arctur noticed the light was out on December 15th. However, due to severe weather, a relief ship couldn't reach the island until Boxing Day. When Captain James Harvey finally stepped onto the landing, he expected to be greeted by the usual signal flag or a blast from the foghorn. Instead, there was nothing. No flag, no boxes ready for transport, and most unsettlingly, no one there to meet the boat. The island felt like a graveyard surrounded by water. The keeper who came on the relief ship, Joseph MOR, was the first to enter the lighthouse. He shouted for his friends, his voice echoing off the cold stone walls, but only the sound of the sea answered him. He found the kitchen just as we described, the food waiting for men who would never eat it. But as he looked closer, he noticed something even more disturbing. The lamps had been cleaned and refilled. The wicks were trimmed. Whoever had vanished had finished their work before they disappeared into the void. The search moved to the logbook, and this is where the story takes a turn into the truly bizarre. The entries for the days leading up to the disappearance spoke of a storm so terrifying it reduced grown men to tears. On December 12, Thomas Marshall wrote about severe winds and noted that the lead keeper, James Duckett, was unusually quiet. Even more strange was the mention of Donald MacArthur, a veteran sailor known for his toughness, crying in the corner of the lighthouse gallery. But here is the detail most historians ignore: there was no storm. Official weather reports from the nearby island of Lewis and the mainland recorded clear skies and calm seas on those exact dates. The tempest that supposedly broke the spirits of these 3 veteran keepers existed only on EILEAN MOR, or perhaps, only in their minds. Why would 3 experienced men lie in an official logbook about the weather? Or were they experiencing something so localized and intense that the rest of the world missed it? The logs continued with an entry on December 13th, stating the storm was still raging and that all 3 men were praying. This is highly unusual behavior for secular lighthouse keepers of that era, especially during a routine storm. The final entry, scrawled on the morning of December 15th, simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." After that, the pen was laid down, and the men walked out into a morning that should have been peaceful. They were never seen alive again. Every 60 seconds, this investigation reveals a new contradiction that resets everything we think we know. If the sea was calm, how did they disappear? Rescuers headed to the West Landing, a steep cliffside where supplies were hoisted from the sea. There, they found evidence of incredible violence, but not from humans. A heavy tool chest had been smashed, and iron railings were twisted out of shape as if by a giant hand. Concrete was torn up, and rocks weighing a ton had been moved 40 feet. This leads us to the most popular theory, the rogue wave. In the North Atlantic, massive walls of water can rise up without warning. If 2 keepers were at the landing trying to secure gear during a sudden surge, they could have been swept away. But here is where the theory falters. The door to the lighthouse was locked from the inside. If the men were outside working, why was the door secured? And why was one set of oilskins, the heavy waterproof coats keepers must wear, still hanging on its hook? In the strict world of lighthouse keepers, you never go out onto the cliffs in December without your oilskins. It's a death sentence. The fact that one set was left behind suggests that one man left the lighthouse in a state of extreme urgency, perhaps even in his shirt sleeves. Did he see his companions in trouble and rush out to help them, forgetting his own safety? If so, it implies that the catastrophe happened so fast there wasn't even time to grab a coat. But a rogue wave doesn't explain the locked door. To lock the door, someone had to be inside. This has led many to believe that the men didn't vanish together. The madness theory suggests that the isolation of Alien MOR finally broke one of the keepers. Perhaps a fight broke out over those strange, missing storm days. If one man killed the other two and threw them into the sea, he would be left alone with his guilt before eventually following them into the dark water himself. The problem with the murder theory is the state of the lighthouse. There was no blood. No signs of a struggle. Everything was in its place, right down to the cleaned lamps. It was the work of men who were calm and methodical, not men in the middle of a violent psychotic break. This brings us to a detail often ignored by casual investigators: the reputation of the island itself. The locals on the Isle of Lewis had long believed that Alien MOR was haunted by phantom sheep and ancient spirits. For centuries, shepherds would bring their flocks to the island to graze, but they refused to ever spend the night there. They spoke of a heavy, oppressive feeling that settled over the rock after sunset. Could the keepers have been driven to a collective hallucination by the sheer psychological weight of the place? The logbook entries about crying and praying suggest a mental state that had degraded rapidly. But what could cause three experienced men to lose their minds at the exact same time? Wait, there is a third, more grounded possibility that few consider. Could it have been a government cover-up? In 1900, the Flannan Isles were a strategic point for the British Navy. Some fringe theorists suggest the men witnessed something they shouldn't have, a secret vessel or an unauthorized landing, and were removed to keep the secret. While there's no evidence of military activity, the speed with which the Northern Lighthouse Board tried to close the case as an accidental drowning has always raised eyebrows. Let's look at the physics of the West Landing again. The damage was 110 feet above sea level. For water to reach that high and twist iron railings, the wave would have to be gargantuan. If the men were caught in it, their bodies would have been smashed against the rocks before being pulled into the deep trenches of the Atlantic. But if the wave was that large, why was the lighthouse itself, only a few hundred yards away, completely untouched, with not even a window cracked? The investigation by Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of the Lighthouse Board, concluded that the men were likely swept away while trying to secure a lifebuoy. He argued that the wind was so strong it simply blew them off the cliff. Yet, his report doesn't explain why the men were all down there at once, which was a direct violation of the rules. One man was always supposed to stay in the lighthouse. For all three to be at the landing, the emergency must have been unprecedented. But here is where the mystery gets weird again. After the disappearance, the new keepers who were sent to replace the missing men began reporting strange things. They claimed to hear voices in the wind calling out the names of Duckett and Marshall. They felt as if they were being watched from the gallery, even when they were alone. Some of them became so unsettled they requested immediate transfers, unable to handle the crushing atmosphere of the lighthouse of the three dead men. Was it the wind, or was it something else? Alien MOR is part of a group of islands known as the Seven Hunters. Ancient legends say these islands are the home of giant birds and the small people who do not like to be disturbed. While we dismiss these stories as folklore today, for the men living in total isolation in 1900, the line between reality and myth was much thinner. Could the psychological strain of the hunters have caused a collective flight response? This is the detail most people overlook. The chair. Why was it knocked over? In a professional setting, a chair is only knocked over in a moment of extreme, sudden movement. If a rogue wave was coming, the men inside the stone tower wouldn't have seen it coming or been in danger from it. If they were eating dinner, something must have happened inside the room or just outside the window that caused one of them to bolt toward the door in a blind panic. What could be so terrifying that a veteran keeper would leave his meal and run into a storm, or what he perceived to be a storm, without his coat? The locked door remains the ultimate puzzle piece. If the last man outlocked it, he did so while his friends were already gone. This implies a sequence of events, not a single sudden wave. It suggests a tragedy that unfolded over minutes, or perhaps hours, where one by one, the keepers were pulled out into the night. The final log entry, "God is over all," is often interpreted as a sign of peace after the storm. But some linguistic experts suggest it sounds more like a resignation, the final words of a man who knows he is about to face something unavoidable. It doesn't sound like a man who is relieved, it sounds like a man who has surrendered. If the storm wasn't physical, but something else entirely, then God is over all might have been a prayer for protection against an unseen enemy. Modern researchers have used computer models to simulate the waves at Alien MOR. They found that certain tide and wind combinations can create double waves that could easily sweep over the landing. But these models assume the men were at the landing. They cannot account for the logbook, the locked door, or the missing oilskin. The science provides a how, but it fails to provide the why. Why would three men violate every rule they lived by on a day that the rest of the world saw as calm? In the years following the disappearance, many poems and songs were written about the three keepers of Flannan Isle. They turned the tragedy into a ghost story, adding details like the uneaten meal and the overturned chair that may or may not have been exaggerated by the first rescuers. But even if we strip away the legends, the core facts remain haunting. 3 men went onto a rock, the door was locked, and then they were gone. The sea kept its secret, and it has never let go. The Northern Lighthouse Board eventually stopped investigating. They officially listed the cause as accidental drowning and moved on. The light was automated in 1971, and today, no one lives on EILEAN MOR. The lighthouse stands as a silent monument to a century-old puzzle. The mutton and potatoes are long gone, the clock has likely been replaced, but the feeling of that empty kitchen still lingers in the minds of everyone who hears the story. It is a mystery with no bottom. As we look back at the evidence, we find ourselves trapped in the same loop the rescuers were. If it was a wave, why the locked door? If it was madness, why the cleaned lamps? If it was a storm, why did the mainland miss it? Every theory is a key that almost fits the lock, but then snaps off at the last second. The Flannan Isles mystery is a reminder that even in our world of radar and satellites, some places remain outside our reach. To this day, ships passing the Flannan Isles look up at the light and remember the 3 men who vanished. James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur have become part of the island itself, spirits in the spray and the wind. They are a haunting reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't what we find, but what we don't. In the silence of EILEAN MOR, the only answer to the question "where did they go?" is the endless, rhythmic crashing of the Atlantic against the shore.